I recently went on a fishing trip down in Louisiana for some redfish. Had a great time. Got some really nice fish. But I tied up a few patterns, some new and some standards for redfish, and thought that they would be nice to do some videos on. So the first one that I'm doing is a Estaz Shrimp. Very basic pattern. There's easy ways to vary this up for various fishing conditions, which I will explain as I'm tying the fly, but this is a very simple pattern, little craft fur tail, some rubber legs, and the Estaz body. That's about it. Nothing really complicated here. So we'll go ahead and get started tying. Start the Estaz Shrimp by placing our hook in the vise. This is a Mustad S71 SS. Old nomenclature on this is 3407. You could use a 34011 if you want. It's a little bit longer shank. This is a size 2. I will debarb the hook. Actually, you can use any saltwater hook that you want to use. Keep in mind the shank length will basically determine the overall length of the fly as well as the body of the shrimp you're trying to go for. For thread, I'm using a Dumbbell 6/0 in red. I'm going to attach this right behind the eye of the hook. Just take it down a little bit and leave it about an eye length behind the eye of the hook. This is where I will tie in the eyes. Now, depending on the fishing conditions that you have, you can use anything from a bead chain eyes, even a mono eyes if you want something really light, to a lead eyes. I'm using a large bead chain eyes in gold, but as I said, you could use a regular dumbbell eyes if you want, if you need to get the fly down fast. A lot of your redfish flies, even though they're shrimp imitations, they're not flies that are fished right on the very bottom. At least where I have fished for redfish, it's just muck bottom, so all you're really doing is just dragging it through. You really need something that's going to be higher up in the water column that the redfish will be able to see. So I'm using just bead chain eyes here, and I'm going to add just a few lead wraps here. This is just some 0.01 lead that I'm going to put on here, and I'm just going to put about a dozen wraps on there. This is just going to give it a little bit of weight so that it will fall real gradual, and then when you strip it just a little bit, it'll come back up and then fall and then back up and then fall. So I'll put about 10 wraps. Remove the excess. And then I'm going to push all that forward to just up behind the dumbbell eyes. I should say the bead chain eyes. You could use a small dumbbell eyes or even lead dumbbell eyes, or if you've got something that is a little bit bigger profile but doesn't weigh that much, again, as long as it is not sinking the fly too fast, if that's your conditions and your need. So the Estaz Shrimp is actually a very simple, straightforward pattern, and a lot of redfish flies and even bonefish flies are that way. The tail on this is craft fur. I'm using a tan craft fur. You can obviously change up the colors on this if you want something a little bit different in terms of how much it either blends in or how much it stands out. I'm going to cut off maybe about a square inch of craft fur. So if you just stand out about a square inch of craft fur off the backing there, you're going to collect all the hair fibers and remove the underfur. The underfur, or the short fibers on this, actually makes a really nice dubbing, and there's a number of other flies that use that as dubbing, so you may want to set that aside. This is a select craft fur, so it's a little bit longer fibers. I have a number of them that are really long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the very tips here and then pull the shorter fibers out and separate them, and then bring them back together. And it just gets everything a little bit more even on the end. I want to measure this, and I'm going to tie in a tail that is about 1.5 times the length of the hook. You can make it a little bit longer if you want. Again, the length of your hook may determine some of that, but it doesn't have to be super long. I'm going to tie that in right at the end of the shank and anchor that down real well. And then I'm going to be tying in some rubber legs, but before I do that, I want to go ahead and band the tail on this. And banding is just putting in some marks on it. I'm going to use a prismatic marker in a dark brown. If you've got a Sharpie, use a Sharpie or a Copic marker, whichever you have. All I'm going to do is hold the tail like this, and I'm just going to touch the marker to the sides here, just to give it a light band. This is a brown. If you want something to stand out a little bit more, maybe use a black. You could also use, say, a lighter gray if you want to. But it just gives it a little bit of contrast. With that done, we're going to go ahead and tie in our rubber legs. There's going to be 2 rubber legs on each side. I'm just using some pumpkin colored Sili-Legs. And I'm going to cut a couple off and advance my thread forward just a little bit here. And I'm going to tie these in so that they are laying right on the sides. I don't think it's super critical that they are laying exactly on the sides, but you do want them to be on each side enough so that they are distinct, and they will flutter and swim separate from each other instead of just one clump. Secure all of those in, and essentially our fly is almost done. Now all we have to do is tie in the Estaz and wrap the body, do a little trimming, a little marking, and our fly is done. So for the body of our Estaz shrimp, we are going to use some Estaz chenille. It is basically just a long fibered kind of flashabou chenille. There's other different types of material you can use, cactus chenille or sparkle chenille, but the Estaz is pretty compact. This is a size grande, which just simply means that the fibers right here are much longer than a regular Estaz. And this is in a tan color. I'm going to tie this in right at the end of the shank and wrap that in. By the way, I'm using a red thread on this. If you want to, you could use something, say a bright pink or even a chartreuse or something if you're wanting to add a little color up front as an attraction. I'm going to leave the thread right behind the dumbbell eyes, and I'm going to start palmering the Estaz forward. As you're palmering this forward, like you have to do with hackles, you'll want to sweep these back so that you don't have any fibers laying forward and end up getting trapped with the next wrap, as this would right here, of Estaz. The wraps don't have to be exactly tight right in front of each other. If you have a little bit of gap, that's fine. And you can also, if you want, put a little bit of head cement along the hook shank and that thread before you start wrapping this on to give it just a little bit more durability. But in my experience, the Estaz is pretty tough stuff. Now occasionally you'll get some of these fibers that start laying down like that. You can take a little Velcro brush or your bodkin or something, or even a comb to tease those out a little bit. I just like to make certain that I've got those coming out and they're not just getting all lashed down. As I get up towards the front here, I'm going to put these wraps right in front of each other. I just want to get it a little bit more compact right up near the front. Get up to the the Bead Chain Eyes, I am going to put a couple of tight wraps right up against them, and I'm pulling on the Estaz to make certain it's nice and tight up against those eyes, and then I will secure that with a few wraps. I will cut off the excess. I don't get too persnickety if I have a few fibers like this sticking out. Generally, it's not an issue. I'm going to bring my thread forward to behind the eye of the hook. A lot of people like to put weed guards on their redfish flies and even their bonefish flies. In the places that I have fished, it's never really been an issue, so I do not put weed guards on them. But if you are in a situation where they are needed, by all means, make certain you leave a little extra space behind the eye of the hook and in front of the bead chain eyes to accommodate some sort of weed guard. Whip finish, cut my thread off, and I am done with the thread. I'm going to tease the body out here just a little bit. I'm going to put some head cement. This is some Fly Tight. It's a very thin head cement, but it will soak right down into all of those threads and secure that very well. Now the only thing, two things I like to do, I've got a bit of a round body, and you could certainly leave this right the way it is if you want, but I prefer to just trim the bottom just a little bit. And this is just going to give me just a little bit more of a profile to one side. This fly will flip over as it swims in the water because of the weight and the bead chain eyes. So I don't trim off a whole lot, but just a little bit, so I have a little bit more profile. And then if you want, you can also put some bands on the body, which if I'm tying a bunch of these, I'll actually do some with and some without. But I'm just going to take the marker around here and just put a little bit of a band right around the body there. And that's it. That is the Estaz Shrimp. As I said, it is a very, very simple pattern, not much to it. You can vary up the material colors and even some of the materials and things to have different kinds of patterns for different circumstances. Estaz Shrimp has been kind of a go-to pattern for redfish. Again, I use the bead chain eyes. You can put some regular dumbbell eyes on there if you want to give it a little bit more weight. I find the tan colors, even a black and a white color actually isn't too bad, and chartreuse and purple seem to work pretty good. So That's the Estaz Shrimp. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video and not only learned a new pattern, but maybe learned some new techniques and a few new skills. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button below. You can support Dressed Irons by hitting the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you get notified when new videos are published. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.